Starmer U-turns has happened in the last few hours. Keir Starmer has decided that 4.5 million people in 30 different local election areas are now allowed to vote. And this story is an interesting one. It's an interesting one for a couple of reasons, much more so than you might actually think. So let me explain what I mean by this. You see, for a long time, there is this political, how do we call it, a dichotomy. So in politics, of course, you're supposed to be sure and certain about what you're saying. You're supposed to say what you believe. You're supposed to put your message across. And the idea is in politics, this shows that you are determined and you're clear about what you think. You've got yourself together. You know your plans. You know where you're going with this. Right? That's kind of the idea of politics. That's the perception of politics. And of course, the reality is that of course, I mean, you think about it, in reality, in anything, people have to change their minds. People have to realize something wasn't as good as it should have been. People need to try and come at a problem from a different perspective. And so we end up in a situation with politics, particularly, where if you just stick with something that might be working, might not be working, everyone's going to be telling you you've got to change direction. You've got to find a new process that works. And of course, politicians who have any backbone will go, no, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. By contrast, if you realize as a politician that it's going wrong and you're going in the wrong direction, then of course the thing you do is to go, all right, well, we'll do a U-turn. Now you don't call it U-turn, you call it a replan or a rework something out, or we'll take things into a new direction. And that, of course, isn't actually what is needed. What I mean by that, by it's not actually needed, is you need to fix what you tried that didn't work. And so you try a new direction. Of course, the opposition, the media will go, well, that was a U-turn. Now, into this understanding of doing something different, changing direction, what have you, whether it's a U-turn, whether it's a course correction, creeps Keir Starmer. And Keir Starmer, good afternoon, Lucy, on TikTok. Keir Starmer is, as we all know by now, the master of the U-turn. But what's particularly interesting, in my opinion, when it comes to this whole discussion piece about local elections is the nature of this U-turn. So let's just backtrack slightly. Just a couple of months ago, Keir Starmer was busy telling all of us that he was going to give councils the opportunity to request the opportunity to be allowed to postpone, not cancel, but postpone their elections. That was how it was sold to us. And Steve Reid, the Labour thug who goes around getting irritated when people ask him questions more than once, was sent out to all the news channels to go, oh, no, it's perfectly normal, it's perfectly safe. We just believe in not wasting money. Now, that alone should have been your warning that there was something more to this. Labour telling you they don't want to waste money. Labour worrying about wasting a few million. Since when has that stopped any political party? We now know that they're going to spend, I think, £63 million shoring up these councils who, it turns out, don't have enough money to put their elections together. I mean, really. Anyway, that's a separate argument. So this was the argument just in the last few weeks. Keir Starmer, the entire Labour front bench, but led on this matter by Steve Reid going, oh, no, we're just postponing. It makes sense. Why waste money? Blah, 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 blah. Now, of course, the harsh, cold, light of day reality is that nobody believes that. Literally nobody has any belief, any understanding, any, oh yeah, that makes sense. And it just isn't true. And when you are told you are not allowed to vote either for the government or for another party you prefer, it raises the hackles quite quickly, doesn't it? Nobody really believes it was anything to do with planning. Governments don't plan. Governments just spaff our money wherever they want to. That's how they do things. They always have. Our government is against this country, says Kaylee in TikTok. Yes, I think a lot of people feel that, very much so. I think that's absolutely true. And so that remains the problem. That really remains the problem, because if we're going to believe, oh, they're trying to save money, well, what about everything else? And governments can't have both arguments both ways. They've either got to say there's another reason. But here's the real problem. And this is all to do, if you're just logging in now, welcome YouTube, Facebook, Insta, and TikTok, wherever you're jogging in to watch this today. Thank you. It's lovely to have you here. The real problem with Keir Starmer doing yet another U-turn is the nature of this one, because Keir and Steve and all the rest of them said to us, there's nothing to watch here. Kaylee just drops in. Yeah, I think you're right, Kaylee. Two-tier Keir has no scruples or accountability. Right. So Keir and Steve were busy telling us there's nothing to see. There's no problem. We're not cancelling. We're postponing. It makes sense. Except the parties that largely, the councils that largely said, I want to postpone, were led by Labour, closely followed by Conservatives. Now, who do we think is going to get an absolute pasting in the next local elections? Let's be honest, it's going to be those two parties more than anybody else. Elias and TikTok, never spoken about those files. So either you're trying to get a reaction, or you're mistaking me for somebody else. I suspect you're trying to get a reaction, but never spoke about those. So that's the situation that we have. And we end up in this situation of trying to understand what we do to make sense of all of this and make something come out of it. So let's look at what they have said. They have said, it turns out from legal advice, they can't cancel or postpone the elections. But you will remember, as I do, they said at the point that they were going to attempt to try and get this through because they had legal advice that it was acceptable. That was only a couple of months ago. So either the legal advice has changed, which feels unlikely, or they got not very good legal advice, which is highly likely, or they're lying about it. And nothing has changed. They knew all along. And the only reason they backed out, of course, was because they knew that if it went to court, they weren't going to get through. Me again, 113 on YouTube says, I wish you'd resign already. I'm assuming you're talking about Keir or Steve. Hayden, I don't know why you make this a Labour point. Hayden, I'll tell you why I make this a Labour point. Because Labour are in government at the moment. Listen, yeah, but the Tories, if you weren't so blocked to anything other than pro comments about the communists in number 10, you'd understand that, yeah, I'm absolutely very open. The Conservatives do this. In fact, at the start of this live, I said, any government has done this, right? I'm very open to the fact. I'm not here to promote any political party over any other. But the reason I'm talking about Labour at the moment, Hayden, is because they're the ones in government. I know it's a difficult concept for you to wrap around your head. Jordan's decided to try and be a bit edgy. Jesus Christ, don't you have a lamppost to decorate? Jordan, why don't you fuck off? Kaylee, Labour are great opposition but can't lead or run a country. Professional victims like the left. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? Now, I saw Jimmy Carr, and he talked about 3 ways to sort of get through. I think it's about getting through life or getting some success or something. One was to become really good at something. One was to become infamous, and the third was to be a victim. And these 3 approaches are ways that you can get attention, you can get noticed, you can get people looking and talking about you. Some of my comments here are people clearly who have a similar approach. Paul on 319, don't vote reform. So here's the thing. If we have got a government that supports victims, and we have got, of course, people who love playing the victim mindset, it's a match made in heaven. You see, who are Labour supporting? It's not people who work for themselves. It's not people who own businesses. It's not people who try and invest and develop and grow and develop and move forward and do better for themselves, for education, for finance. It's not people who try and look after their loved ones, their families, people who are reliant on them. It's people who go, I can't feed my children. And Keir Starmer stood up in front of the country and said, what a great thing this is that the government are now feeding children. So the 2 choices are not government feeding children or children starving. Children starving, no one is in support of that. Let's be clear. but we shouldn't actually be in support of thinking it's a good idea that the government feeds children. That's an appalling call out for the country. And it's a terrible indictment of people who call themselves parents when they don't plan the most basic of childcare. Let's pick up some more of these messages. Professional victims, MGGN, people are so bad at rage baiting now. What would have been the alternative, says Davey? Oh, right. So the original point of this live, of course, Davey on TikTok there, is this whole point of, do we cancel or postpone elections? Remember that some councils have already been postponed for a year, maybe 2 years previously. So the argument we're doing this because it will just be 1 year. No government, no council does stuff on time. They just don't, right? They don't. If they say it's going to be done in a year, it's going to cost 5 million. It'll be done in 5 years, and it'll cost 58 million. The governments just don't. It's not their money, remember. Councils don't have to make their own money. They have to spend budgets. This is why councils and governments and the public sector generally attracts people whose barrier to entry is, can you tie your own shoelaces? That's harsh, cold, uncomfortable reality. If you've never had to make money, you don't know how difficult it is to make money, right? That's the reality. So the reality, Davey, what's the alternative? If they were going to reform the boundaries, if they were going to do the mayoralty contests, we would still expect some element of democratization of that process. You can't just go, well, it's a bit awkward, so we're not doing it. You know, democracy isn't an admin thing that you can cancel like a dentist's appointment. It's important. Of course it's important. Hi, Keir Starmer, what are you doing here on TikTok Live? It's a clear example of misleading the public. Tony, the problem with the elections was this. This is Tony on TikTok there. The problem with the elections is this. We were told that a bunch of councils couldn't have elections a year ago. I think 4 or 5 of them. And everybody was outraged, but it was 4 or 5 of them, and it was a brief postpone. You thought, well, I kind of understand it. This year, it went from 5 to 30. And some of those 30 were the original 5. In other words, people who lived there with 2 years of no elections. And that's shocking because they were told 1 year because we need to postpone it. The following year rolls around. Oh, right. Now, suddenly 30 councils, let's say this had gone through. Let's say the Labour government had forced this through illegally, it turns out. Then what would have happened? Well, maybe a third year would roll around. Oh, yeah, can't have elections. It's a bit awkward because it's nonsense. Hayden, I'm not referencing the Tories. No government cares about its population. Sorry, you know that. Yes, I do. My point is, I don't know why you make this a Labour point, was your question there. Hayden, that's why I pulled you up on that. It's just a really, not you specifically, Hayden. I mean, I don't know you. Maybe you're a lovely person, but it's a really tedious phrase. When I talk about Labour being absolutely shocking, which they are, there's always somebody who pops up and, yeah, but what about the Tories? What about the Tories? The Tories aren't in now. When the Tories were in, I was criticising them. But we don't have the Tories at the moment. We have Labour, right? And we're all much poorer for it. I've got 5 new taxes coming in the next 2 to 3 years, right? My car's going to get taxed in a different additional way. I've got all sorts of taxes flying in that I'm going to be hit with. God bless Labour. I am a massive net contributor. I pay a lot of money into taxes. Now, I'm not proud of that. People who say, oh, yeah, I'm really proud to pay taxes. I call bullshit on that. I hate the amount of tax I have to pay. So when whingy lefties who have only ever taken from the system claim that wealthier people should pay their fair share, I mean, I call it for what it is. Kaylee, problem is people, people have to pay for it. In the main, it's the squeezed middle class. That's absolutely right, Kaylee. Keep up the good work, mate. Thank you, Baz, over on TikTok. When was the last time you changed your mind on something? It was definitely Wednesday. No, Thursday. I think there should actually be a means test for people having children. Need to be self-sufficient. I don't know what the solution is relating to. Oh, sorry, just 1 second. I'm going to have to step away for 2 seconds, folks. Hopefully, some of you will be here when I come back. I need to step out briefly. right, Sam? You're right. Sorry, folks. Hopefully, we have a few people still here. I do apologise for just walking off like that. So rude of me, wasn't it? I do apologise. Reform is Tories 2.0, says me again on YouTube. Right, folks. So sorry I had to disappear there. Had to just deal with something. Just a quick check. Lucy B, you are top of the viewers at the moment. Minky Mumu, you'll be second, and Jazzy, you'll be third. Just that's according to TikTok. Let's pick up some more of your messages. Right, this is an interesting one. Kaylee says, I think that there should be some kind of means test for having children. People need to be self-sufficient. Now, I don't know what the solution is, Kaylee, but I do think we have a we have a situation at the moment where, and again, Labour lean into this. They go, people's lives change. They could be working. Somebody gets ill. Somebody loses a job. Somebody, whatever happens, and we can't let the children starve. So what they do is they take an extreme situation and they proposition something awful. Can't let the children starve. Well, nobody is going to go, oh, yeah, children can starve, right? That's the argument. But that's not actually an argument that relates to the problem. The problem is, do we need to find a way to support people that are struggling? Yes, we do. Do we need to find something that helps people? Yes, we do. Can we let children starve? No, we can't let that happen. But simultaneously, something must happen. If you decide to have a child and you have no visible means of support, there needs to be a method, an education. There needs to be some kind of something, because at the moment what happens is if you have a child and you can't pay for it, you get given stuff. And if you then have another child, you get given more stuff. And now, of course, because we have communists in number 10, if you keep having children with no concept of how to look after them, you get given more stuff. Now, that doesn't make sense, does it? It makes no sense whatsoever. And that's our difficulty. We are in a situation in this country where we are all over the rights that people have, but we don't consider the obligations. If you decide to bring a child into this world, you have obligations. for a number of years. And feeding that child is the bare, basic level 1 minimum. And we get caught up in this ridiculous world of, yeah, we'll pay more, we'll do more, we'll deal with this. And none of it makes sense. There isn't even a test to see whether people are capable, let alone afford it, says Moon Kemp. Blake, Jesus Christ, Kelly. This is the problem. Why is that such an outrageous concept? Listen, I made a very successful video a little while ago that said if you claim benefits, you ought to be required to give something back to your local community. And the number of people that pushed back, why should people be forced to work? I don't think people should be forced to work. But why should I be forced to hand over a proportion of money I make if you can't be asked to work? Some people need support. Yes, they do. And those people need more support. Yeah, but why should they be forced to? I'm not making them work. Yeah, but if they don't work, they don't get money. That's correct. If you live in a road of people who all get up every morning and go to work and you don't, via choice, right? Why should I pay for you? So my modest proposal is this. If you don't work, then you do something to help the community. My proposal is this. At the moment, if you're unemployed, I'm going to come back in a second. Oh my goodness, folks, I am so sorry. Definitely going to get sacked from this one, aren't I? Good grief. World's most disappearing number of lives, this is. Right, let's come back. Let's see if anybody's still here. Good grief, I'm so sorry. Let me pick up some of your messages first of all. TikTok, totally agree. I think the legal advice they first should be named. Yes, Tony, that was about the... that's what this live was actually about originally. And I'm so sorry, folks, if you're still here, 20 on YouTube and Facebook. And TikTok, I can't see how many are on TikTok currently. 12, 13, we've lost a lot of people. My fault, of course, because I had to go off and do some stuff. And I thought, I'll just leave the live running. We'll see what happens. Right, let's pick up some of your messages. The original live, folks, if you're just joining us, and if you are sticking around, thank you for sticking around. If you're on TikTok and you're sending me some TikTok love, the little kisses there, the little hearts, that's appreciated. Insta, I don't know what you can send. Facebook, I think you can send stars. They're appreciated. They cost a penny each, but they help the algorithm. And YouTube, I don't know what you can do on YouTube. Is there a like or a flag or a thing? Anyway, let's get into some of the messages. Danny Garfey, where's he gone? Yeah, sorry about that, Danny. I'm forced to work. Most of my neighbours don't. Michael, my point exactly. I totally agree with what you're proposing. Unfortunately, we don't have a proper link to work. A parent is guaranteed childcare, but has to commit to work, be it paid or voluntary. Well, this is the problem, you see, correcting inaccuracies on YouTube. At the moment, people go, well, I've got a child, can't do anything, right? And it doesn't seem to me right that a child has got to be the excuse for why you can't do things. It's still your responsibility. Now, does that mean we need better support, better childcare? Yeah, we probably do. But at the moment, what we've got is that's the get out of jail free ticket for lots of people. And it's not good. Danny, where's he gone? Yeah, I'm back. The system's effectively broken. Proposals seem to be one extreme or the other. Very rarely does common sense prevail. That's absolutely true. Mountain Rescue Guy has gone with 2 question marks in TikTok. No, on YouTube there. Do you think that point... I'm just dropping back the older notes here and I will catch up, folks. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry I vanished, by the way. Thank you. I appreciate you sticking around if you had to stay here. Do you think that point about being parents, not being able to plan and budget for food's a bit strong? No, I don't, Davey. I think there's a difference between people becoming parents and having a child and finding life difficult, and people becoming parents with no income, no plans, nothing, and then going ahead and having a child, and then doubling down and having a second child or a third child. If you have a child and you're in work and then something goes wrong, that's a different argument. And if you have a child and something goes wrong and then you're struggling to afford, you clearly need some support. If you then decide to go ahead and have a second or a third or whatever, there has to be some questions asked here, right? We can't just keep saying the state will pay, because the state is you and I, right? Because I definitely work. All right, last year, I paid more than £100,000 in taxes across various platforms and businesses. Now, isn't a flex. That isn't anything other than a statement of fact. So because I'm paying that level of tax, you might draw some conclusions about income levels, right? Again, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm pointing out is that at that level of tax, I am eligible for not one single benefit. Nothing. But I'm required to pay for people who have taken no responsibility in their life, their life's choices, or anything. I'll tell you what, my phones and channels are buzzing today. And that, if we talk about fairness, because fairness is always trotted out, particularly by lefties, it's fair that somebody who makes more money hands over more of it to somebody who doesn't. Well, that's never been established why that makes sense. It's not It is not fair for somebody who doesn't work, has never worked, and continues to go through in life with no plans to work to be funded by someone else. It isn't fair that if you get up every morning to go to your shift in the job you hate, I happen to love my work, but a job you might hate, to get underpaid, but you go and do that, you miss all those things in your life because you're working. It is not fair that a large amount of your money is taken to given to somebody who has opted out. That isn't fair. There's no argument that makes it fair. Yeah, but what about the children? A bigger argument has to happen. Why is that whole process okay? Starmer's a joke, so ship shake. What additional car tax is coming in? Oh, for me, Noon Camp, because I've got an EV. So I'm getting new tax on the car itself, and mileage, pay per mile, I think, is coming in a couple of years. So that's all deep joy to be looked forward to. DigiDevil, hello. Restore is well intentioned, but only make it more likely that Labour keep power by splitting votes. Some people think that. If there's any private landlords left today, by the end of this Parliament, there'll be zero. Shipshape, great example. So lefties particular have a real envy of anybody who goes out, puts the effort in, puts the time in, takes the risk, and then gets rewarded financially. And so what they do is they punish people who do that by overtaxing and over red taping them. And then what they don't work out and don't join the links up is, well, why do we have rent so high now? Why are tenants struggling to find places? I'll tell you why. Because starting with the Conservative government and then carried over into the Communists in number 10 at the moment, we've had 10 years of war and attrition against private landlords. Now, if you don't believe private landlords are a great idea, fine. But a better solution would be to say to private landlords, the state will buy your property at a fair market rate, will give you a decent tax exit, which will incentivize you to sell, cash out, and then we'll take over the running. But what they've actually done is to go, well, we'll drive up your taxes to exit, we'll drive up your taxes to maintain, we'll drive up your obligations and liabilities, we'll treat all of you like the bad tenants, and then we'll punish the whole lot of you for doing what was a good idea once. So anybody that got a diesel car because at one point the government said diesel's better than petrol. So everyone, oh, we'll go and buy diesel, right? And what happens? Oh yeah, diesel's really bad now, so we're now going to punish you for getting diesel. Anybody got an EV? EV's good, right? Get an EV. We'll be rewarded for getting an EV. Oh, I'll get an EV. Now you've got an EV, we're going to punish you with additional taxes. Governments are ridiculous. Angus Grant's currently our top listener on TikTok. Oh, what have I stumbled into? Says Mini Kumumu. Tony, I think you look a bit like Kia. Tony, got to join the back of the key for that one. That's been said so many times. Jason Ferguson, what happens? Your wall moved. I know, Angus. Look at this. There you go, eh? Look at that. True, if you come here illegally, you get stuff too. Yes, that's noted. I don't get any stuff and I struggle because I'm paying for the people who get the stuff. Minnie, that's exactly my point. That's precisely my point. If you are a higher taxpayer, you get none of the benefit. I pay Band H council tax. My council tax this year is probably going to hit 6,000, or it certainly will hit £6,000 next year. I get none of the benefits of people who pay reduced council tax. I get zero of the additional benefits of people who are on an unemployment benefit. And I don't get any extra bin collections. So tell me how that's fair. And you can't make an argument for that. If you want more than 2 kids, you pay for them. You made that choice, says Christine on YouTube. I mean, there's an argument, Christine. Why do we pay for anybody's children? I mean, I'm not saying it's the right argument, but it's a fair argument. I mean, why does anybody pay for anybody else's children? It is an argument, right? I'm discussing the mindset and ethos of the latest government is promoting, says David. A guy of the road's son turned 18 and they went out and had a party, hence the benefit system as an adult, having never paid anything in. So I don't know if that's true or not, David, but that's kind of the issue, isn't it? If you incentivize not working, some people will not work. And if you disincentivize working, some people will start to wonder why they bother. How do you balance that with a declining birth rate, says Rob? Well, this is the thing, isn't it, Rob? You've got to reward what you want, but surely you can't just reward popping out babies, because a declining birth rate is clearly a problem. But what are we saying we want to incentivize? We want to incentivize people to have children with no plan for how they're going to bring those children up. I don't mean, do they go to university? Do they move outside the UK? What kind of person do they become? But can you actually feed them? Now, if we're incentivizing those people, their offspring aren't going to have the greatest start in life, are they, Rob? So that's the problem. There needs to be a little bit more balance and nuance brought here. So Graham's big idea is to make benefit claimants do community service. No, Frank, not quite. You kind of missed the point there. I'm not surprised, because I can sense with your line you're trying to be a little bit edgy and failing totally. So let me be frank with you, Frank. If you want to not go to work, I personally don't think you should get money for that. But we live, particularly with a bunch of communists in number 10, it's only fair you get a bit of money, right? So you're going to get some money. Okay, so if you're going to get money paid for by all the people who live around you who do work, it is only fair that you should be asked to give a little back to your local neighbourhood. You could do litter picking. You could go do some shopping for the old folks. You could do some garden cleaning. You could clear up some rubbish on the roadside. You could answer the phone and help people who are struggling with their lives. You should do that for 16 hours a week. You get 8 hours a week to learn, to develop, to move yourself forward, to improve your CV, to train, because otherwise you're going to say, I've got no skills. Well, you need to get those skills, and you get 16 hours a week to start applying for jobs. That's it. It's 40 hours a week. That's the expectation for you to get your benefits. How's that sound, Frank? How are you? I'm very well, thank you. Are you in jail, says Angus? I'm not. Exactly, says Happy Fit, thank you. Fairness to who? Fairness to me, Auslander. I'm a taxpayer. I want my tax money to be better spent. If you're entitled to some of my tax money, I'm entitled to say, well, go and pick up some litter over there. That's fair, isn't it? That's a fair deal. I pay for everything I do. By the way, I double pay for some things because I opt out of public sector offers because they're so shit in the UK, and I pay for private service in certain areas. So I get no tax break for that. You're welcome. Why don't people think my two siblings in Birmingham can't find anywhere to rent? Easy cook. That's the point. I mean, it's obvious if you apply 5 minutes thought to it. If you massively punish landlords by overtaxing them in everything they do, and you don't let them exit the market, and you don't give them any opportunity to make the most out of what they're doing, and instead you keep on just hammering and rewarding people for all the things you don't want, it's inevitable what's going to happen next, which is what's now happening. I'm disgusted. I had that one. I'd like to ask you about Wales. The national government promised to model themselves on Welsh Labour, who have been abysmal in every way. So why don't voters heed the warning? Well, Mass and Rescue Guy, I suspect, and I'm only guessing, the last government was so atrociously bad, following a series of atrociously bad governments, some people thought they can't be worse than the Tories. That's probably why. You're absolutely right. Incentives never work. Thanks, David. Craig, it's hard to blame Labour alone. The main shift started on the Tories with Section 24. I actually said that, Craig. Labour's policies may have compounded the issue, and fiscal drag will probably push rents even higher. Craig, absolutely right. I did point out 10 years ago this started under, forget the guy's name, under David Cameron's George Osborne. Osborne started this 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and then Labour have compounded it. It's hard to blame. Yes, lend me £20. I'll give you back £10. That means I owe you £10. You owe me £10. Let's call it quits. That's the benefit system at the moment, says David. What's your favourite? Michael there. Thank you for trying to join in. Can I take this opportunity to thank all you taxpayers? Ah, right. Okay. Cheers, Jeff. Right, folks, listen, thank you all for being here. I'm so sorry I had to interrupt the live on a couple of occasions to vanish and go and deal with things, but all is good now. So thank you all for being here. Lovely to see you all.